Think about the last time something got under your skin. A conversation that went sideways, an email that landed wrong, a moment where someone pushed exactly the right button. How long did you carry it? An hour? 3 hours? The rest of the day? Here's what the science says. The physiological reaction that the body had in that moment, the actual biochemical storm that hit the system, lasted only 90 seconds. Everything after that, you did that yourself. That's not criticism, that's not judgment. It's the finding that Dr. Bolte Taylor, a Harvard-trained neuroanatomist who studied the brain's stress response architecture in extraordinary detail. And what she found was this. When a trigger hits, when something happens that activates your stress response, your body releases a wave of stress hormones, cortisol, adrenaline, the physiological cascade of fight and flight. That wave moves through your body in approximately 90 seconds. 90 seconds. So why does it rarely last 90 seconds? Because the thinking mind is extraordinarily good at re-triggering the stress response. Here's what happens. The initial wave hits, and in those first moments, before it clears, your mind begins to process. What just happened? What does it mean? Who's at fault? What should I have said? What does this say about me? What's going to happen next? Every one of those thoughts is a new stimulus to the amygdala. Every replay of that moment, every time you run the scene again in your head, a new trigger. And every new trigger releases a new wave. So the 90-second physiological event becomes a 2-hour ruminating session, a day of low-grade instability, a week of background tension that colors everything. Not because the original event warranted it, because the mind never let the body finish its response. For high performers, people with active analytical pattern-seeking minds, this loop can be particularly persistent because smart minds are just good at finding reasons why the reaction is justified, at building the case, at keeping the story alive, and the nervous system doesn't know the difference between the real threat and the thought about the threat. It responds to both identically. So a conversation that ended hours ago is still running your cortisol because your mind is still in the room. This is where coherence training and the 90-second rule connect. The freeze frame technique from video 5 was built exactly for this moment. When a trigger hits in the first seconds of that physiological wave, freeze frame gives you a way to interrupt that loop before the thinking mind picks it up and extends it. You recognize the reaction, you pause, you shift to heart-focused breathing, you direct the attention to the area around your heart, you slow down that rhythm, and you ask a better question from a cleaner slate. What you're doing physiologically is giving the initial wave room to clear without feeding a new story. You're not suppressing the reaction, you're not pretending it didn't happen, you're not performing calm, you're simply not adding to it. And that's a learnable skill. It doesn't happen perfectly the first time or the 10th time, but with practice, with consistent coherence training, the gap between triggers and response begins to widen. Not because you become less feeling, not because things stop mattering, because your nervous system gets faster at clearing, because your baseline HRV is higher, which means your system is more flexible and resilient going in, because you practice shifting your state enough times that the shift becomes accessible even under pressure. This is the difference between someone that gets triggered and recovers in 90 seconds and someone who gets triggered and carries it on for 3 days. Same event, different nervous system. Let me make this concrete. You're in a meeting, someone challenges your position in a way that feels disrespectful. You feel that reaction, the tension, the heat, that spike. Without this framework, your sympathetic nervous system takes over. You either respond from that reactive state or you suppress it and it runs underground for the rest of the day. Either way, your nervous system never clears. With this framework, you recognize what just happened in your body. You take 3 deliberate breaths through your heart. You give the wave 90 seconds to move through. You come back to your baseline from a clearer state and you respond from there. Same meeting, same challenge, completely different outcome. Or you wake up at 3 a.m. and the mind starts running. A problem, a worry, a conversation you're rehearsing. Without this framework, you're awake for 2 hours feeding that cortisol loop with no resolution. With this framework, you recognize it. Heart-focused breathing, you shift your state, don't engage the story, give the wave room to clear. Most of the time, you go back to sleep in minutes. Not because the problem went away, because you stopped feeding the reaction. The 90-second rule is one of the most practical, useful things I can teach. Not because it requires the most skill, but because it reframes everything. Your reactions are not evidence of who you are. They're physiological events with a beginning, a middle, and an end. Your relationship to those events, whether you feed them or you clear them, is trainable. 90 seconds. That's what you're actually working with. In the next video, we'll talk about integration, how to take everything we've covered and make it work in the actual complexity of real life. Triggers, high pressure moments, travel, hard weeks, what it takes to bring coherence off the practice mat and into the world. Subscribe if you haven't, Drop a comment. Tell me what you're going to think about differently after this one, and I'll see you in video 8.